And Michelle, thank you for coming back and being with us today and being willing to keep working with us. One more hour of your time, of your valuable time. I was
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I was telling Michelle that I got really great feedback from all of you about our session with her. So thank you for coming back. We're looking forward to keep working with you. And in our second hour, we're going to be working on a new book that we start exploring this in the program. So we are all yours, ready to work with you.
All right, wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and pin myself, Damien. Is that okay?
Yes, yes, and I'm going to do that too. I'm going to do the spotlight for everyone.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm going to
Um,
make you co-host just in case you want to share.
Perfect, perfect. Well, everyone, hello. I feel like we're old friends now. Some of you I'm following on LinkedIn now and connecting with. So thanks so much for everything and for having me back today, Damien. What I'm going to share with you today, I'm excited about everything. I mean, silly, really, I'm silly. But what I'm sharing with you today is the first thing I do with multi-million dollar sales teams. And so for me to be able to share this with you is really, really exciting, really fun. I'm actually just going to take about 25 minutes. So we have some time at the end for questions and Q&A. And this is really informal. So as we go today, no matter what your question is, no matter how silly you think it is, it's somebody else is thinking it, put it in the chat. Now, I might not stop right away, but that'll help me understand what you missed. And then I'll go back at the end if I don't stop. Okay. And so the other thing I want to tell you is actually, I lost my train of thought on that. I don't know what else I want to tell you, but we're just going to dive right in today. Oh, I know what I want to tell you. It came back. You're going to go through this training and you're going to go, well, great, multi-million dollar sales teams. Already some of you were thinking it, right? And you're like, how does that pertain to me? Wait for it. I promise you it pertains to you. So take those notes, really listen as always with an open mind as you step into anything new. So some of you have read my book already. I know you, Kevin, have. And if you have, you've heard this story before. But I want to know by a show of hands, does anybody remember when they were young and their parent, I heard this is a thing that mostly happens to poor kids, but do you remember being left and not picked up in time? You're waiting at the bus stop at school. Okay, everyone, right? You can remember that feeling of feeling so lonely and alone as you waited for your parent to pick you up. Well, I was 10 years old waiting for my mom to pick me up. And I know many of you are from Southern California, so you'll resonate with this. And I was in Laguna Niguel, Orange County. Well, my parents, the poor things, they commuted all the way to LA, an hour and a half, stuck on the 405 back in the days when they would bust out the newspaper instead of text on the cell phone when they were stuck in traffic. And every day my mom would be late to come to get me and I would be putting quarters in the machine. I'd be wet in my Mission Viejo Nadadores parka, just waiting for her to come, waving as the other moms took the kids home. And I vowed to myself that day that I would never do that to my kids, right? Just like you do so many silly things when you're a kid. And so when I had a sales call that went over, flash forward, 20, 25 years later, and I pulled into that parking lot, to the Montessori parking lot, and I saw my youngest, I have three boys, standing in his Montessori gown. It's pink, which is just adorable, on the corner with his backpack on and his head hung low. All of those feelings came back to me at once. And I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm literally becoming my mother. I'm doing exactly what my mom did. And that was always what I felt was putting work before my kids. So the next week, I really started to think about what was sustainable. And don't tell anybody, this is, between you and me, but I was actually taking sales calls in my minivan. And if you know anything about me, the minivan is like a big part of my life. They have the sliding doors. It's really fancy. I sit in the back. And I was taking calls in my kids' preschool. So how ridiculous is this? I'm 200 yards away from the poor kids standing on the corner because the sales call is going over. Well, the next week, I started to really think about sustainability and setting up the call and what would work and what would not. And so I was like, come hell or high water, I'm not going to go over on that sales call. All right. So the next time I had a sales call, I was really trying to focus on it, trying to modify the call, trying to push them forward, but it didn't work. So the next time I mentioned it to the person and I told them it was really important. I had an appointment after them. Never mind, it was to pick up my little kid. I had an appointment after them and we had to end the call right at a certain time. And they said, oh, great, no problem. And we both watched the clock as we went. And oh my gosh, I cannot tell you the shift that took place that next week as I took calls for 45 minutes. I enrolled more people than ever before, and my mind was blown. What I realized as I sat back and I thought, what am I doing differently? And I analyzed these calls. I always record calls. I thought to myself, oh, well, no kidding. I had fierce boundaries. I showed up like a professional. I managed my time. I kept the call moving forward. But what's most important and what I most observe in coaches is I didn't let the client go into story. Do you remember our last training? I shared with you that that's the surefire way to kill a sale, is to coach somebody around what it is they're struggling with versus the decision to get support. And when you let them go into story, coaches especially, you really let them go into dangerous territory where 90 minutes later, you're talking about their grandmother, their mother, all of these problems. So it was these boundaries. And I realized for me, I always really need, like, I will eat anything. Like, I will not stop eating. I have very little food in my house. I just have to have very little boundaries. Chocolate, candy, I can't have anything. So I have to have these stopgaps for me. And this has really worked well for coaches. So, and now some of you are going, well, again, I'm not a sales team. This doesn't apply to me. But what's really neat is when I went to go sell my coaching, I had the opposite problem of you. You have this rich coaching experience. You've studied, you've gone through this journey. I just had the sales experience. But then I was starting to dabble into coaching itself. I didn't have that confidence and that rich training that you're getting here. But I didn't know any other way to host a sales call. So when I went to host my first call, and it was somebody that I had met, one of the first sales calls was somebody I had met in a marketing group. And he said to me, we'll call him Eric. He said, great, I'd love to work with you. I'd love to talk to you about working with you. And so we started to DM each other. And he said, okay, here's the deal. Call me Sunday. He gave me the time period. Here's my number. And the devil and the angel on my shoulder, one said, no way, don't do it. It doesn't work to call somebody in the middle of a Sunday. He's going to be busy. I haven't set the call up properly. But the old me, wanted to go back to my old ways and go, well, you're the salesperson. Call them when they're available, you silly. You don't have a gazillion clients. What are you doing on a Sunday anyway? But instead, I took a deep breath and I remembered what I know to be true. Is that calling a client is a chasing energy. Immediately, we're starting off the call where I'm, hey, do you want to work with me? What are you doing? What are you doing? Can I get your name? Right? All of these things. Instead, I said, oh, Eric, I don't work on weekends, I said. And I'm actually really booked out next week. Here's my scheduling link. See if one of those times work for you. I dropped it in the chat box and then I waited, like, no joke, with bated breath. I was like, oh my God, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Right? He booked the call. And I'll get into this a little bit later, since I had booked regular sales calls, I knew to provide a questionnaire that would get him super excited about our call. So not only did I have a call where he was jumping into the Zoom, I knew a lot about him and I was getting him excited about working with me. So what's really neat is that not all things translate from big sales teams to individual, but the sales call setup is one of them. And so what I'm going to share with you today are the 5 golden rules, things that you can implement right away. In fact, I'm going to challenge you to post your links with each other so that you can support each other, even if you you are not selling your coaching yet and you're getting people to help you practice coaching, you can do this very same thing and you can have this set up, which is really neat, and you can start to modify your questions. Okay, are you ready to dive in? The first thing is very, very easy nowadays, but you will resist this. You will want to deviate. And you're going to roll your eyes at this. Host the sales call face-to-face. I cannot tell you how many coaches are still resistant to this. They'll turn off their screen, they'll dial in, they'll do all these things. But not only do you need to host the call face-to-face, you need to make sure that the prospect knows you expect them to be on camera and ready to connect. So I found this out the hard way after taking, again, dozens of calls. But for you, it matters because you're going to take 2 or 3 a month, right? So you need to enroll 2 out of those 3. And I would take calls, and every 5th call, somebody would be walking down the aisle of Target. They would be bathing their children, eating their lunch, driving down the 405, right? Trying to multitask. Well, there is no way that somebody can make a decision about investing thousands of dollars in themselves. There's no way somebody can do that heart vision exercise we talked about, right? If they're multitasking or anything. So simply telling them that you expect them, and we'll talk about how to do this, make sure that they're ready and prepared to connect with you face-to-face, is you demonstrating what it's like to hold fierce boundaries and what it's going to be like to work with you, okay? Even if you don't host your calls face-to-face, I do recommend doing them for the sales call. I can answer any questions about that later as we go, okay? So hosting calls face-to-face is the first thing that I want you to be sure to do. And the second thing that I want you to do is to only take sales calls at times that work for you. So this one is really fun because what's interesting is, so this is a 5 o'clock call we're taking, right? So if you're available at this time and this feels really good to you, this would be a great time for you to host sales calls. I'm typically not available at this time of night because I have 3 young kiddos. So it doesn't matter if I take a sales call when you're available, if it's not on my time, because it just doesn't work for me long term. And so you think it doesn't matter because you want to get those sales calls and you're a new coach. But the thing is, it does matter because it matters how you feel during the sales call. And it's really important that you enroll nearly every person you speak to, because when you don't, and it's for a reason as silly as timing of the day, you start to lose your confidence in how you feel each time. And we want to be really gentle and loving with ourselves on the sales call. So 9 and 11 is when I know I'm at my best. The kids are off at school. It's quiet in the house. I'm fed, settled. I've taken a walk, whatever. And then if I take that second call at 11, that gives me a little bit of time to finish up work. And I can even squeeze in a third follow-up call with that schedule. I have a new client, Lisa. She's a parenting coach. And what's really neat about her is she said, you know, when parents are available, when the kids are in bed at 9 o'clock at night, I'm semi-retired. I can take a sales call at 9 at night. Perfect. She has both parents together. Genius. Like, she just nailed it, right? Both parents together. The kids are settled in bed. They can both jump in front of the camera. Hot damn. Yes. Okay. So only taking calls that work for you. I mentioned in rule number 1 that you might from time to time have somebody, even if you send all the messages and warn them that they need to show up face-to-face, you might have somebody who's walking down the aisle of Target, or who shows up 15 minutes late, or even though you told them this was a 45-minute call in your 3 reminder emails, which we'll talk about, they only have 15 minutes. So there's something that my colleagues and I have termed the gentle release. Again, we want to protect our hearts, our beings, they will not enroll. They will not enroll in 15 minutes. This is not a client, and you just can't learn this until you've gone through enough calls. I've taken 600 calls, hundreds of thousands in ad spent. Okay, I'm going to save you the time. They won't enroll. So instead, Show your fierce boundaries, demonstrate the leader you are, and let them know that it's really important that you connect at a time when they're distraction free. This call is about them changing their life. And it's so important for them to take some time. If they can't do it in the sales call, they won't be able to do it in the coaching call either. And say that. Don't be afraid. And go ahead and release them into the universe and say, hey, let's go ahead and reschedule this call and move them on. If you know that they're not a good fit for some reason, it's just very clear right away that they got on the sales call and they shouldn't, have a resource ready for them. Say, hey, what I want you to do is X, Y, and Z first, and then jump back on a call. Be really open and honest with them. And then again, send them off into the universe. Do not go through the entire sales call to get the experience, right? Go practice on a friend or somebody else. We want to, again, be really, really conscientious. Number 4, again, I would just want you guys to write this down. Limit your calls to 45 minutes, and I want you to be sure to tell the person. So it should be in your calendar invite. It should say 45 minutes. It should be in 3 reminder emails. And then you're going to, again, remind them at the top of the call and make sure that they've put aside that amount of time in case they have to jump off early or anything like that. Make sure you've set that up. Again, what's really neat about the 45 minutes, it stops you from giving away coaching. It's that boundary, like the chocolate that's not in my cupboard because I will eat it all in one sitting. No kidding. My kids have to hide their candy from me. And so it's the boundary that you put in place for yourself and you do it for your clients. I discovered something really interesting in that we kept having no-shows, or somebody would want to reschedule calls. Right? And so really tracking what's going on with your sales calls is really important. And I started to notice a pattern. I thought, why are these really good prospects? And I knew they were great prospects because of the application that they had filled out. Why are these great prospects not showing up or asking to reschedule? And I noticed that it was when they had scheduled more than 3 days out. And so interesting. And it wasn't because they weren't interested or it wasn't for them. It's because we're human and we get very distracted very easily. So maybe when you read the person's book or you watched the webinar or you read the email, your brain started to go, yes, 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 that's me. I'm ready to fix that problem. But 3 days later, a lot of other things came into play and got in the way. So super simple fix. Only allow 3 days of availability. Today's Wednesday, so I would allow all the way over till Tuesday, right? 3 to 5 days of availability showing on your calendar. And another really neat thing to do is to hit the Make Me Look Busy feature. This is on Acuity and Calendly. And so you can have times available, but when somebody books, it'll suck it off your calendar, right? And show another time. So it's really neat. Make Me Look Busy. And here's the thing. Do you want to book on a call where somebody has all day, every day for the next month available to you? Even if consciously you're not thinking it, subconsciously you're like, this person isn't really in demand. You're also having analysis paralysis and decision-making challenge. What day, what time? But if you have 3 days, the next 3 days, which by the way, meetings are probably already scheduled for you, right? If meetings are already scheduled, the next 3 days is really ideal. And that's when we can keep their attention for the next 3 days, send them little goodies in those reminder sequences that will remind them of why they reached out in the first place and what to think about and be prepared as they settle in and get ready for our call together. Really simple, really easy. How are you supposed to know that if nobody tells you that? So I'm telling you it today. And if I ever click on your calendar, it's one of the first things I do when I work with somebody is I go, okay, all right, let's just go ahead and start to fix this. You'll want to deviate. And it does take a little more time. So that's really why I take the time to tell you this story instead of just say, go do it, because it is going to get hard when you have to say, hey, I'm actually only available during this time, right? it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard to release somebody from a call. But the first time you do it, you're going to be so excited. You're going to feel so empowered. And then you're going to write it with such authority in the next email. You're going to say it with such authority in the next live that you do, that it's so, so neat. So give yourself that grace and let yourself do that. And let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Missed calls. I do want to say they won't enroll. So don't reschedule. Just don't even waste your time. And again, that's something I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. You have to trust me. It just hundreds of calls. If somebody reschedules, now let's say they have a true emergency, their cat dies, something horrible. I mean, obviously you're human. But typically somebody will not purchase when they miss the call, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Okay, so I'm going to look at the chat here to see if there are any questions, and we can kind of work through these a little bit and make sure, I mean, it's pretty simple, right? And it's common sense, but so often when you go to book these calls, you don't hold yourself as a professional and you just think, oh, whatever, we'll just go back and forth. I'll send them a Google invite. These little tiny things erode your trust. And you're asking them, you don't have a big corporation behind you. You're asking them to part with hundreds, potentially thousands of dollars of their money. So all of these little micro steps really, really matter. Okay. I'm going to look through my notes here for just a second and make sure I didn't miss anything, and go ahead and put some questions in the caption or in the chat if anybody has any questions. Yeah, okay, I think I'm okay. Jesse, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, it's all right. So I was just curious if having long application is a barrier for people who are interested in doing it.
Yes, absolutely. It should not be long. If you want to send it to me, I can look over it. You want to really think about what you want from them. So the question I dislike the most in these applications, and you'll see it, is like, what is your income level? It's like, what, because, and I teach, if you've read my book, get your hands out of other people's pockets. It's none of your business what they spend money on. Guarantee you I'll find $30,000 tomorrow for something I want to invest in, right? And so if you mark me off because of whatever criteria that you've made up in your head, you're really, really silly. I always tell this story. I worked at the Cleveland Clinic years ago, and did I tell this story already? I'm getting senile, I'm over 40, and I worked for the Cleveland Clinic years ago. And this woman drove a Honda Accord. She wore cowboy boots. I actually just came back from the barn. Like, she smelled a little bit, not smelled, but like, you know what I mean? She was like, I could tell she had that barn smell on her. Right. And she lived out in the country. Well, I didn't care. I had no idea. I was young. And so I didn't have these preconditioned ideas about money in my head and what it should look like. And I was also from Southern California. And I know that a lot of people who drive fancy cars are one paycheck away from losing it all. So it just really does not tell you what somebody can afford. And sorry for this tangent here. But long story short, she ended up donating $1 million over lunch. I asked her, I said, how would it feel to donate to this doctor, this physician that has made such an impact in your life? I presented the opportunity. It wasn't my job to judge. And then I said to her, well, what amount feels good to you? And she said, I think about $1 million would feel really good. Right? And I said, all right, well, lunch is on me. It was awesome. And it was such a big, big, powerful lesson in not judging. And my husband's from Ohio, and those folks are hiding money under their mattresses, right? They are richer than you think they are. Hot damn. His parents compared to my parents, my parents were living it up, flying all, His were more frugal with their funds, and it's just a different way, and you have different priorities. And so that was a tangent to answer your question. You want this to be really clear and concise. You can look at mine. I will also privately, I didn't want to post them here, but I will post you some other folks who I like a lot. And you can LinkedIn me and I can send those to you so you can look. The person should feel excited about working with you. And so you want to start to think of some questions that are really good to get them excited, right? What are you most looking forward to as you reach midlife? What would, these kinds of things. And I can show you mine so you can take a look at that. Damien, I saw you unmute yourself.
Yeah, what I want to say is that, like, when I started coaching, I never had any of this kind of information. So I never had the opportunity really to prepare myself. I use my intuition and my charm. That's what I say,
Yeah.
but here is like, okay, you can have a structure, you can have you can plan, okay, you can be prepared.
Yeah.
And I think this is what is very valuable, I think, for everybody in this class, is to pay attention, okay, how you can be effective and preparing yourself for these meetings. So, like this questionnaire, this about setting a good time for you, no longer than 3 days. These are kind of great tips that can make a big difference. So I'm very grateful, even for myself.
Yeah,
to hear what you have to say.
Okay, Jesse, I'm going to give you a quick answer, okay? And then we could talk about this more in depth. But 2 things for everybody I want you to make sure you have on this form. And these are like the most fun magic questions, okay? One is, this is so silly. And it just really kind of depends on what you're coaching on as to whether or not you want to do this one. And you can modify it for yourself. On a scale of 1 to 10, on a scale of 1 to Bruce Lee, how badass are you? That is such a silly question, but it really gives you an idea of what the person thinks about themselves. And they'll always write this little quirky comment, and they'll always be really intrigued by this. And so a coach taught me this years ago. You could say, I'm for some reason always into Joan of Arc. On a scale of like 1 to Joan of Arc, how brilliant are you? Or how badass are you? And so this helps you start to get a little playful with the client. And if you're in corporate, like, that's not going to be quite right. But that is an out of the box question. And so think about, for you, what's a fun question, so that when you get on a phone call with them, you're like, not Bruce Lee, you like fill in the blank, John Wayne, whatever it is. And then you just start to have this like friendly banter. It's so fun. The other thing, and this is ridiculous, you should have a question that says, do you promise to arrive to our call on time and ready to connect? A checkbox. Do you promise to arrive on time and ready to connect? Freakishly stops no-shows. Isn't that bizarre? I mean, it's the silliest little thing, but that checkbox will really have folks showing up on. It's just, yes, I've committed. It's so silly. You want just a few questions. Anyway, Jesse, we'll move on from this because I want to make sure to answer everybody's question. Dee Dee, I think you were next, my dear.
Hello.
Thanks,
and thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is your questionnaire available in your book?
So it is not available in my book, I don't think. Sometimes I forget about the resources, but I'll drop the link to my calendar and just book a call and then cancel it and put in the notes, like, Michelle, I'm testing out your calendar, and you can see the questions I ask. Now, and I will also find a couple more, Damien. Maybe you could send them out or post them in a group you have. I'll find another couple businesses, and I'll give you an example of good and bad. So my calendar right now, I have both coach training programs on there, or anybody who's doing like a marketing program, connection calls, and sales calls. So I combine them only because I just didn't want multiple forms. It was getting a little clunky. So mine isn't the perfect example of yours. But if you want to go ahead and put together some questions, just make sure you have the same amount as mine. And then also, you want to, so just think about the format and the flow, but we can help you out, Dee Dee.
That sounds great. I was just going to say, I saw an example of a bad one this week. My husband and I wanted to interview some interior designers, and we got one with 16 questions that was so bureaucratic. We just decided this person was not a fit for us. We
Yes.
thought, these are the kind of questions that someone in that situation would ask when they meet with you. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't want to waste people's time. Give me a little bit of info. Where'd you find me? Ready to show up on time? What inspired you? You're off to the races. So make it personalized to yours. But yeah, go have them. It should be boom, boom, boom. John, go for it. Thanks, TD.
Yeah, Michelle, thanks so much for being here. I think it's been great to have access to your time for 2 sessions, not only a great book. As a recovering pleaser, when I read the advice in your book, don't allow rescheduling, I fell out of my chair, picked myself up. I kind of breathed into it for a little while to get comfortable with myself again. But now I think I've got a little bit more clarity that the boundary that you're setting there isn't necessarily, hey, it's a day ahead of time, I need to reschedule. And then you give them the window and the approach to do that. Or, as you say, the gentle release, giving them an opportunity to find a better time. It's really the no-show. It's really them showing a lack of commitment to the time after you've already agreed and aligned on a time to meet. Is that right?
Absolutely. And John, it's your job to do your part. So if you're not sending reminder emails, if you haven't let them know, if they haven't checked that little box, it's your job if they're to do that part. But when they trample on your boundaries, that should give you warning bells should go off. And for Damien too, or anybody running a coach training program, that person, they're going to be late. They're going to reschedule on you. You bet your butt, right? That they're going to reschedule on you time and time again. And believe somebody, when they show up to that sales call, acting a certain way, arms crossed, I don't know, what is this? I don't know, that's how they're going to continue to show up. And so maybe that's something you want to work through, but really, like with a coach training program, for example, it's really impacts the group. If you have a group program and you have somebody that's not aligned from the beginning and it just doesn't feel good, it really, really costs you actually a lot of money. So when you start to think of it from that way, what does that do for the person? So think about when you said no to them, do you think maybe they'll show up for the next meeting for somebody else? What does it do to kind of change how they navigate down the road next? And maybe it's a year later and they come back and they go, remember that John guy? That was so weird that a salesperson said, no, not going to go ahead and reschedule 2 minutes before because I felt like it or forgot. It's interesting, right? When we really honor our time and value ourselves, other people value us as well, just the same as any relationship.
Great. Thank you.
Amy, I love your comment there. Having worked in philanthropy, this is spot on. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Anybody else have some questions here? Kevin, I see you there.
Yes, Michelle, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
This is a really tactical one just about Stripe. Last time we were on, you challenged us to use Stripe, and I took that as a challenge.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for it. And I'm wondering logistically how you work through the activation fee and then the fee for the engagement, and how those two things get broken out into separate transactions in Stripe.
Yep. So you want to have we're just going to go with the $1,500 for 3 months. Okay. Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay. So you want to sign into Stripe before your call. This is I'm so superstitious. I always do that too. I have a payment form up and their stuff filled out. And so I'll do that, have a $500 payment ready to go. Okay. Then on the phone with them, you can fill in that first payment.
Okay.
Go ahead and hit submit. Ready to go. Take a deep breath. Go set up a reoccurring payment for the 3. You could do it the proper way, absolutely. But I actually want you to do it the improper way, which I'm describing first, because something's going to go off on that call where they're going to say, okay, yeah, I can do that payment today, but have the other one come out on the 18th. Do you know what I mean? And I don't want that to throw you off. And so just focus on that activation fee versus the whole big picture. And then you can go ahead and go modify later.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anytime you get stuck to, that sounds silly. Obviously, Google it, but like Google really kind of specifically and like, just be like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. I set a timer and be like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. Ask, the help. Stripe is always changing their interface. So like you'll pull up something on Google and then it'll be totally different. So just, keep at it until you have it. And, then you do it once or twice and you'll be good to go. But focus on that one first step. And like I told you last time, Kevin, forget even about it. Write it down. We're pausing the recording, write it down, then burn it. Okay. And have their information ready to go. Don't let anything stop you. We could spend a week, trying to get Stripe just right. Don't let anything stop you from booking those sales calls. Jesse, in the reminder emails, he says, do you include anything besides reminders? So absolutely. And it's going to be really particular to you. When I'm advising a client, we want to get them really excited. This is a great place to put a testimonial. We at one time had so many sales calls that this was before iOS updates on Facebook, that we really had to narrow down folks. So we asked them to watch a video prior. You could even have them do that. Please, don't have it be too long or maybe required. But some people make decisions differently. And you want to be conscientious. I use the Kolbe in my program. I'm not too into tests per se, but the Kolbe is really nice because it helps you understand how you make decisions. And that's really what we're focusing on here is how do we make decisions? Some people are fact finders. They want all the information. They're going to watch all your videos. They're going to read all of your emails. They want all the information. So you want to have it available to them. But other people are just going to skip over it. So you might have, something available to people, but not necessarily make it a requirement before you get on. And just keep playing with it. Think about, oh gosh, remember I said, what does somebody need to experience before they work with you? What do they need to hear? Maybe it was an awesome podcast you were on, and you put that in there. Maybe it was a saying that you like, and they go, oh my gosh, I love that book too. Or, so on and so forth. There's something that's going to resonate. So just start to think about that as you kind of work backwards, but just start with those simple reminders in the beginning. And then you'll start to go, oh yeah, that'll go, that will work there. Katie, where are you on my screen? She asks, and Kevin, did I answer that? Or Jesse, did I answer that question? Okay. How do you screen prospects? So that intake form, fantastic. So if I'm enrolling them for a coach training program and they say they're a 1, right? I might say, and there's just some, you get to learn, there'll be these like keywords that they say or things that just are a little off in their writing or whatnot. And so you'll say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and cancel this call. Would you mind watching this webinar and making sure that this is what you're looking for, right? You can go ahead and cancel through really gently with a ton of kindness, always in service, taking your bias out of it, right? Maybe English isn't their first language, really being mindful. But if you know right away from the get-go based on their application, it's not a good fit. Again, don't host the call.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask you another question?
Yep, go for it.
About the mic. I have had some success doing giving away the coaching, like doing the free 90-minute vision call, building a relationship, following up with things, book recommendations, like really just introducing to people in my network for people who are looking for a job. I mean, just being really generous. And it can take a while, but I mean, today I had someone, I think it's going to go ahead, sign up for twice anything I've ever charged anyone before in the UK, but from someone who I did a vision call with 3 months ago.
Okay.
Who just said, like, she's worked with coaches. I've never experienced that. No one's ever gotten me to that place, whatever, in one call. So, and I can tell, like, I've had this happen numerous times. but the hit rate is fairly low. But I still am feeling like, I don't know, I'm having trouble letting go of that concept.
All right. So, and I don't want you to always, if something's working, don't stop doing it. So typically you're, Katie, a little more skilled than the average practitioner in transitioning from coaching to selling. And so let's see how we can make it better, because this way works for you. It feels good. So we don't want to change it. What tiny thing can we do to improve it? So one thing is perhaps how you set up the call and how you set up those reminders and how you set the intention. I'd love to bring you through X, Y, and Z so you can experience what this is like. If it feels like it at the end and you're interested, what I'm going to have us do is go ahead and schedule another call for us to talk about it, right? So then you've changed the experience, and that, you know, that feels really good to you. You're going to follow that 3-day rule, and you're going to get them back on the call really quickly. You've appealed to their emotional brain. Now you're going to maybe give them some logic in those reminder sequences. So think about not do it my way. How do we do it Katie's way, where it feels really good, but we take some of these same concepts and just make it a little bit smoother, right? Because you're enrolling people. How do we enroll every single person?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. No, that's spot on, because I give it and then it just drifts. It's like, okay, enjoy your gift. There's a lot of goodwill, but it's not, how do you pull that in?
Yeah. And so booking that call right there. And then even, here, read this before we meet, or, here's a little activity I want you to do as you reflect upon this. And this is an example of what we might do in between our time together, right? So they start to get a taste of the light and easy homework you have them do.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm happy to kind of wrap up a little bit. I have a kid at climbing, 2 kids at swimming. So I got to run out of here and make sure I am not late to pick up any of them. Although I did bribe them today with a couple of bucks. They've discovered vending machines recently, which can entertain them for a solid 45 minutes. So David, go ahead.
Yeah, so I added it in the chat as well. So one of the things that I'm starting to think about is like, okay, what would a website have, right? We've talked about the the thing just tried to raise my hand again because the AI. So is there anything that you would recommend having on your website that would aid in having that initial call? And if not, is there just anything you would recommend ensuring that you have on a website that just talks about your, I don't know, capabilities, coaching, or practice, whatever?
Yeah. So it really kind of depends on where you are in your journey. If you are starting off as a new coach, I really invite you not to mess around and go down the website rabbit hole. It's a very sneaky way of your brain to go, woo, I can spend 6 months perfecting my website and not go out there and talk to real human beings at CrossFit or the moms group or church or whatever it is. This will be really fun. So, your little monkey brain wants to go over there, right? And our brains are like, yes, this feels so good. And so I want you to really take a deep breath and think about what your goal is and the fastest way to get there. It is so much easier to sell to somebody on a sales call, and it will take you a couple of weeks, right? Maybe 2 weeks to get good at a sales call. It'll take you a lifetime to perfect that website. And you will be going on and on and on. And the biggest, best companies, you'll see they're booking people to calls just as fast as they can, because words are tricky. And it's really tricky to all of a sudden, like, try to share and articulate this in a few sentences, right? With my book, right? Like, I had an editor and there were hours, and it's still, some people don't get it. Or anyway, the written word is very hard. When you can connect with them face to face, so everything on that website is about getting them to book a call and get their information. I actually even don't follow my own advice. And I went and created a website. I use a company called Go Expert Sites. They're really, really good. And they create a website for you with their membership. And I created this really pretty site, but people weren't opting in. They weren't booking calls from it. So I dumbed it down and I made it a really simple opt-in where you can grab a chapter of my book, or you can jump on my newsletter, a good old-fashioned newsletter, and get tips every single week. Every day, people sign up for that constantly. I made it super, super easy. And then you can take those next steps with them after that to book a sales call from there. So you really want to capture their information. They're not going to suddenly go to your sales page unless you're really good and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired to book, right? Eventually they will. And that's something that you can work on down the line. So for right now, I would really actually focus on that opt-in, that lead magnet, whether it's, and just that. I wouldn't even have a website. I would just send people to that and they can sign up for whatever it is you want them to do. Sorry, David, I know you didn't like that answer probably.
No, it's perfectly what I needed to hear. So thank you.
Yes, I know. It's really hard. And the same with me. I want to rely on tech. I want to rely on Facebook posts. I want to rely on everything that stops me from having face-to-face conversations, right? What is the cheat? And the cheat is learning how to host sales calls. You're going to feel good about it. And also, I would love to know like what shifts in you when your calendar is ready to go. I recently updated my calendar and I've been sending it to everybody. And I have had so many calls because I feel good about it. And suddenly I'm just like, book here. Hey, oh yeah, I'm available. Go ahead. You'll just suddenly like send it to everybody freely and with this weird confidence because you're really excited about your calendar set and ready to go. You don't have to think about it. So that's one really barrier to entry, the calendar, which is kind of silly. Well, awesome, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to check that chat really quick. Damien, is there anything else?
No, I really appreciate you coming back. And
Yeah,
so we
next time I can have pranks. I was going to have your book like here.
Okay, great. Good. I think complements well with yours.
All these books lined up.
Great.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for your coming back, and looking forward to keeping in communication. And I hope next year when we have other programs, you can come back and we invite graduates and some of the people who are here today can come back to future activities and sessions with you. And also they can contact you if they want to work with you one-on-one, or they want consultation or want support. That's also available for them. Or if you hear somebody who is looking for somebody to help them, you can also refer Michelle, because that's a way that also works. Sometimes somebody who may be looking for somebody to help them. So we can support.
I have a gift for everybody in the chat. I put a PDF of everything we've talked about today. So you can go and reread some of those tips there. And yes, like Damien said, reaching out to me, LinkedIn is actually the best way. Maybe I'll drop that here. And sharing my book really is one way you can really, sometimes people post, they're so nice. They post my book on LinkedIn and people always buy if somebody else posts about it, and they buy it and just it leads to amazing things. So if the book has touched you, if my work has touched you, if you share it with others, that really helps me to reach a wider audience, which is my goal. My goal is that every coach all over the world, it's a big audacious goal, be handed a copy of Joyful Selling and learn to sell with joy before they graduate their coach training program. So that's my big audacious goal that I'm working towards in 2024. So thank you, everyone.
I will be happy to support you with that. And I put you in the chat box, the newsletter, so you can see how easy for everybody. So everybody have what's coming up these next couple of weeks. If you want to attend any of the other activities and programs. And also there is a review from your book, so you can look at that later. Maybe you want to subscribe and receive the information. You may join us in some of our free activity that we offer. You may be interested in that. So thank you, Michelle, one more time.
Yes,
if people
absolutely.
want to say
Bye,
thank you in the chat, anything you want to say?
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle.